Hey, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. So thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Of course, you're clearly a Kiss guy, I can tell.
Just a little bit. What gave that away? The poster or the t-shirt? And then
And the Funkos.
yes, I have all four of them.
Nice.
Big Kiss fan. Actually, I have the
Neat,
books right next to me here too. So
neat. Were you actually at that Tiger Stadium show?
no, I'm way too young for that. I was at the final show though.
Oh, were you really?
Yes, I was there December, I think 6th, the second of
Very
the two
nice.
shows. So it was very awesome.
I was desperately trying to get there, but ended up just not being able to.
I know. Usually I go, you know what? $100 is all I'll spend. But then I was like, you know what? For the last one, I'm like, it doesn't matter. I'm like, we're still working in the morning, so it will make up for it. But it
Yeah.
was it was awesome.
I saw the Madison Square Garden show, the first of the Madison Square Garden shows on that tour, like the
Okay.
first reunion tour in 95.
Okay.
So it was fun.
I was at one of the MSG shows on their like second or third farewell tour, and apparently the rumor goes that Peter Criss was in the building and they were gonna let him do Beth, but at the last
Oh,
minute they for some reason just said no, and it was like a massive heartbreak. I was like, I just want to see him sing one song. It's all I
dang.
wanted. But
Well, it's silly that they didn't have him back for that last show, you know.
I know that was the big reason why I wanted to go. I'm like they could just all come out and play and just throw it under the all the water under the bridge, but in the end, once I saw Bruce Kulick say he's not coming, I know Ace then said he wasn't coming. I was like, oh well, it is
Yeah.
what it is. And then they did the Avatar thing, and it became like
Oh, so dumb.
I know we were all like, what is this? This was an odd ending, fell a little flat, but and now they're doing the Las Vegas shows. So I'm like, are they really going away?
Well, I did a gig once. I played in a band called the Jayhawks for a while.
Hmm.
They're from Minneapolis. And we did a gig once where it was going to be the Jayhawks opening for the Gene Simmons band.
Oh wow.
And, you know, because it was a charity that Gene was a part of that they were selling tickets for. And it was at like a minor league baseball stadium, like a little park, you know. And of course, no one was buying tickets because no one wants to go see the Gene Simmons band. So they added to the bill Cheap Trick. Then they added to the bill Don Felder from the Eagles.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
then at the last minute, Gene said, "Oh, by the way, Ace is coming, and he's going to play with my band." So
Wow.
Ace came out and did Parasite and Shock Me and
Oh yeah, yeah, I've seen those
Cold Gin
YouTube
and stuff.
videos.
So it's that was a pretty special evening for a fan such as us.
Yeah, and then I think it was maybe a month later they started bashing each other again
Yeah,
online, and I was like, "What are we doing here, guys?"
of
I'm like,
course.
"Go for it, you
It,
just get in a room."
but it's funny that he knew that, I need to sell tickets. I got to get, I got to do this Ace thing because people
Yeah,
love Ace.
as much as people say he's in it for the money, he's a smart businessman. You can't deny that.
Did you see Ace play down in Jersey last month?
No, I've seen him, I think at least 4 or 5 times though over the last
Hmm.
couple of years, and his band is really great.
Oh
Brian
yeah,
Cook and Jeremy Asbrock, they're amazing, and they all
absolutely.
sing,
Yeah,
especially the drummer.
I like that they let the other guys sing the Paul and Gene songs and don't make Ace do it, you know?
Yeah, so do I. And I like that I'm also a photographer, so they're very like camera
Oh, nice.
friendly. They're all like pointing at the cameras and posing. I'm like, "Oh, it's just like Kiss." Like without the
Nice.
makeup, it's just like Kiss. And
That's
I like
awesome.
that they're all I know one of the bassists plays bass, he also plays a little guitar, so they're always like intertwining, doing a whole different songs or switching off every now and then. Because I know they had a bassist who was also an Accept now once he
Oh,
left,
okay.
which is kind of cool. But
Yeah,
so again, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. I'm very happy you could join us.
of course. Anytime.
So you got started working with the Bon Scott estate. How did that start?
So I had a career as an executive at Sony Music in their legacy division, which basically oversees the company's catalog, and catalog being any music that's not brand new, essentially. So we would do things like box sets and album reissues and all the fun stuff. I started there in the late 90s, and in 2002 Epic Records actually made a deal with AC/DC to bring their catalog to Sony Music. And at that time, I started working with the band on, CD reissues with, booklets and pictures and liner notes and all that good stuff, and remastering the records, because they had never really been mastered for CD at Atlantic. So, so yeah, it started then, and then, over the years we started doing things like the Family Jewels DVD set and the Plug Me In DVD set, and then eventually the Backtracks box set, which is it looks like a guitar amp, and it actually is a guitar amp. You can plug it in and actually play through it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Um, yeah, and which Angus did once, and we filmed him. That's on YouTube also. Um, so yeah, so got to know, the band and their manager and lawyers and the publishing people and, all of that stuff. And then I left Sony during COVID and started my own consulting business for artists and estates and management companies, stuff like that. And Bond's family, through the publishing company, reached out to me and said, he's about to turn 75. So this is 4 years ago. He's about to turn 75. We need to launch like a website and get social media channels and, a YouTube channel and all the stuff that you kind of need to do. Um, and so we started there, and we were pretty ambitious, and continued to do that. Um, with this things like the tribute concert and some pretty extensive merchandise offering and plan and all of that stuff. All while being very, respectful and um uh you know to AC/DC and Angus and everything that the band is doing and has done. So everything we do is Bon Scott specific.
Right.
Um, but we've got a great line of merch. We're doing collaborations with like the Knucklebones people. We've done a Funko. We've done NECA figure. Like the action figures seem to do really well. Super 7 is another company that does them. But we also have, t-shirts and hats and iPhone cases and all the standard stuff that you would want from your favorite artists. Um, and yeah, but we've done, collaborations with like uh the family wanted to get a Bon Scott tartan done because he's from Scotland,
Right, right.
originally. And even though they all moved to Australia when they were kids, they still have a very strong affinity for Scotland. So they wanted to have a Bon Scott tartan plaid pattern created. And so we did that, and then actually we had two done, and so those are now registered with like the Scottish Tartan Registry, like official government, entity. And so we've done a collaboration with a big kilt maker over there, so you can get like a Bon Scott kilt and a vest and a whole bunch of stuff that's made out of that plaid. And then we've taken that plaid and done blankets and scarves, and um, we're going to do flannel shirts with a company called Dixon,
Okay.
who also does, they've done Metallica and Black Sabbath and Eddie Van Halen and, these cool, like sort of plaid work shirts that, are for people who love hard rock and metal. So you'll have Bon Scott Dixon flannel shirts, um, and just keeping these, any heritage artist's name and presence alive is, you have to do a million little things. It's
Right.
never one big thing. And even somebody like Freddie Mercury and Queen, the Bohemian Rhapsody biopic was sort of the cherry on the sundae, but like those guys are doing stuff all the time with, remixes and reissues and box sets and, video content and all kinds of stuff. And plus they're touring, with Adam Lambert and stuff like that. So to keep the ideas of these things alive, you have to constantly be doing many, many little things, or else the interest in your artist will just wane over time. And you'll
Right.
end up with, an artist that people sort of kind of remember, but they don't really remember. Um, so, that's the position that we're in, tasked by his family to say he needs to be more famous 10 years from now than less. So how do we do
Absolutely.
that? You know?
So then, I'm sorry. So then would you say
Go
that's
ahead.
kind of like what your day-to-day is almost like, just kind of planning events and kind of keeping the memory alive in what you and the family think is the most respectable way?
Absolutely, yeah. That's what it is. And we focus a lot around the birthday
Hmm.
because, it's like a celebration and, but the fans tend to want to talk about him around the anniversary of his passing, which is in February.
Right.
And then but then there's all 12 months of the year that, you can do lots of other things, but we tend to concentrate it around the birthday so that it's, you know, media and we have a nationwide radio campaign happening with
Oh, wow.
different stations and shows like Dee Snider's House of Hair or Nights with Alice Cooper, that sort of thing, where we specifically say, okay, July 9th every year, give Bon a happy birthday, shout out, play an extra AC/DC song, and just sort of make it a thing that people remember and can look forward to. So so you'll see some of that happening, as well as Sirius XM and iHeartRadio and those types of things. Um, and yeah, and we're doing a lot more to build towards next year, which will be his 80th birthday. So we'll have a bunch of other things happening. So it's something that you need to think about every day and do stuff, or else it will fall to the wayside.
Right, absolutely. So obviously, before we go on, it's pretty safe to assume that you are a big Bon Scott and AC/DC fan,
Oh,
right?
massive,
Yep.
massive.
Just
Yeah,
had to just clear the clear the air out there.
and I would say I was a big fan before, I had the opportunity to work with them, but doing the work on the catalog and doing things like, listening back to remasters and vinyl and, the outtakes and the B-sides and all of that stuff. It's like being put into a position where you have to listen to it. It's just you gain this much bigger respect for the music, and I just became such a bigger fan. And then talking to people who knew him, people that worked at the record label, the Australian record label, his family, friends, other people that had been around him. You, there isn't a single person that has anything bad to say about the guy.
Right,
So
right,
it's like everyone is just like, oh my God, he was the greatest hang. He was just the funniest person. What you saw on stage is exactly what he was like off stage.
right,
Um, so, it's he endears himself to you in a way that a lot of other rock stars do not.
right.
Even after, 45 years after his passing.
So then, do you remember the first time that you sat down and you either flipped the car radio on, you put a vinyl on, and you listened to AC/DC and you heard his voice for the first time?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was for people my age, and I was let's see, 6 in 1980 when he died. So, it was always very confusing, especially in the US, because you had Back in Black, which is the album everybody had, which is
Right,
Brian Johnson. And then you had people who did go backwards and buy High Voltage and Highway to Hell and stuff like that. And then, there was that period where Atlantic released the Dirty Deeds album in 1981. So after he died and way after it came out in Australia. And then there was the Let There Be Rock movie that came out, which was Let There Be Rock was also an earlier record, and it was a show, and it was the old singer, and now they have a new singer, and it was just this really confusing, um, 4 or 5 years there in the early 80s. But the first time, I would say when I was in, seventh or eighth grade, something like that, and somebody had a cassette of the High Voltage album, and I just remember we just couldn't get enough of Long Way to the Top, and especially Big Balls, just because it was the most amazing, sort of
right. It's
chant along song when
as a
you're that
seventh or
age.
eighth grader, you're laughing at the word, and you're like, ha 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 ha, ha, and
Exactly.
catch on.
And you don't appreciate at that age, so the big thing I've come to appreciate about him is the sophistication of the lyrics.
Hmm.
Even in a song like Big Balls, to have somebody write in that way, is something that you don't really see. Even people if you gave professional, songwriters, people who make their living writing big giant pop songs and you said, okay, I want you to write a song about a guy who's gonna, kill your neighbor because you don't like him, you know what I mean, or beat up
Right.
the guy in high school who's giving you a hard time. Write a song about that. None of them would come up with anything as catchy as Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap
Hmm.
or clever or the guitar riffs that Angus and Malcolm made up and the combination of those three guys and their sensibilities made songs that on the surface might seem like, oh, those are for kids or those are, but they're actually very sophisticated and very hard to replicate, which is why people still cover them. It's why half the band set in 2025 is still material from when Bon was the singer.
Yep.
Um, and it just continues to resonate and to have songs about, uh, I always say writing songs about rock and roll or writing rock and roll songs about rock and roll is like the hardest thing ever. And so many people have done it poorly that, to have him constantly thinking of new ways to, spin a phrase or take a phrase that from something and then turn it on its head and make it something else is, you know, I don't think he's given the credit for being as clever and insightful as he was.
Right. And especially when you said using a word that everyone knows and changing it, like in big balls of fire, big wedding ball gowns, like just using that one word to explain everything else and then kind of like hinting at it with like a little
Yeah,
nod and a smile about what he like truly means, which I think the only other band that I know that even did a small wink of that was Guns N' Roses. I used to love her, but I had to kill her. But it's not, but it's so much on the nose that it's not much of a sly winker smile.
exactly, exactly. And it's all different layers or levels of meaning. It's almost like, when the old blues guys used to sing, you know, with double entendres or triple entendres or, Chuck Berry lyrics where he's talking about one thing, but he's really talking about something else is, and obviously he was a huge fan of those guys. Um, but, to turn a phrase like, you know, it's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll and making it a whole song that, is
Right.
so good still to this day. And, obviously the guitar riffs and the solos and the playing of the rest of the band is a huge support to all of that. But, the actual idea of it, if you had somebody that was writing lyrics on par with anyone else during that time, it just wouldn't have worked as well as it did.
Right, right. So you just mentioned Long Way to the Top if you want to rock and roll. I recently saw the Black Crowes on their current tour and they blast that song at the top of like they turn it all the way up to 11 for a Spinal Tap reference and they run out to that song and the entire audience is singing it. So what does that mean for someone that works with the family to hear that younger band just still playing his music or even AC/DC still playing his music and fans that are younger, in their 20s, 30s, are singing along to every word, to every song. They know the notes, they know how to play it.
I mean, I think that it's just a testament to how good it is. It's not, it's it it obviously captures people's imagination and music brain in a way that other music does not.
Right.
And they were really put down when they were first out as, super rudimentary, crude, crass, whatever else you want to say. And, maybe it was a little, but I think that in the long term, they've been shown that it's actually a lot more lasting than anyone gave them credit for in 1976 or whatever. Um, so yeah, I think that people, you know, playing covers of the songs. I've heard Metallica does the same thing with Long Way to the Top. They blast that at the top of their concerts. There's a Australian rules football team in Fremantle that plays Long Way to the Top at
That's
their like
awesome.
halftime or if they win, I forget. Um, so it's almost like a universally understood language of if you want to get people psyched up for something, here's what you play them, or if you want to get people, excited and it's this is what you do. So I think it's the fact that it's lasted this long is just it's all the proof you need to go, it's a great thing. Now let's peel back the layer and say, okay, who are the people who actually did this?
Right,
And
exactly.
here's the guy that wrote the words. Here's the guy that played the guitar. Here's the guy that played drums. So I think it's important that people are doing stuff like that. And I wish I could say that, anyone that knew Bon had anything to do with the Black Crowes using that song. Um, but that's just a lucky thing that I think is just it's a testament to how great the music is.
Right. So he has, as you said, 78th birthday coming up on the
70,
9th.
79th birthday this
79th,
year.
excuse me, 79th
Yeah.
birthday coming up on the 9th. I'm a journalism major, not a mathematician, so sometimes just adding up gets a little hectic. He has a show coming up this year at the Bowery Electric. What do you think fans can expect from this show?
So the birthday bash, or the tribute show that we're doing, came out of another sort of fundamental need that the family had, which was registering copyrights and trademarks. And so in the US, if you want to have a trademark on tribute events to a person, you can do that. But what you actually need to put on a tribute event in order to get that sort of legal claim to that. Otherwise, everyone and their brother can be doing a crappy Bon Scott tribute thing.
Right,
So, they wanted to control the quality. They wanted to control, who's doing it and when and all of that stuff. And so what we decided was that like we would actually start it last year and do a tribute event on the birthday. So we did that. And our version of it is not like a standard tribute band where we have people like, Angus is not wearing shorts. We don't have one person that's the singer that's, wearing a denim vest and no shirt and, trying to be these people. It's not that at all. I think it's a much more respectful way of doing it, the way that like the Jimi Hendrix estate,
right.
Experience Hendrix does their Red House tour, which is they have a backing band and then it's like this series of guitar players that come out and play songs and sing, and no one is trying to be Jimi Hendrix.
Exactly. They have so
Um,
many good guitarists that come out to each tour.
oh, who wouldn't want to do that?
I mean, Zach
If you've
Wild.
yeah, if you've ever picked up a guitar, it's like I want to play with, Billy Cox and Chris Layton. I want to play Red House with those guys. It's like everyone wants to sign up for that. And so what we're doing is, starting in New York City, because that's where most of us live. We're just getting sort of the best hard rock and heavy metal singers from bands and solo artists and stuff like that, to each do like a song, or two, so that it becomes a night of lots of people singing and doing a tribute and, hopefully bringing along people that, they know as part of their fan bases and turning other people onto other artists. And it is more like a party, like a birthday party, rather
Right.
than a tribute concert. But this year we've got like Corey Glover from Living Color
Hmm.
is going to sing Highway to Hell. Jimmy Coons from Cactus, Dave Anthony from 10 Ton Mojo, Peter Shaw from Trans-Siberian Orchestra. People that are just around and love Bon, and the most fun part of planning it was, you would think like, oh God, everyone's going to want to do Highway to Hell. We're going to have to convince people to do, you know, but everyone had their own favorite song. So it's
Right.
like, we put the list together and it's like, oh, there's no overlaps. Everyone wants to do, What's Next to the Moon or Sin City or, almost going out of their way to do a slightly deeper cut. And we had to make sure we were covering, Dirty Deeds and, TNT and all that stuff. So it's the putting together of the show is actually the easy part. And now we're, thanks to folks like yourself, promoting it and making sure people know this is what it is and this is why we're doing this.
Absolutely. Especially, I mean, who better than Corey Glover from Living Color? I mean, I saw him live last year and I was just blown away because not many singers' voices keep up well 30, 40 years after they come out. And he's still screeching at the top of his lungs. And I'm like, they have to be using a backing track. I'm like, that's not it's just not possible at their point in their career. And he just stepped away from the mic and it stopped. And I was like, he's actually singing live.
Oh yeah.
Blown away by it.
Oh yeah. I saw him. about a month before CBGB's closed at CBGB's
Wow.
with his then solo band. And it was, I'm not kidding, the loudest thing I have ever heard, but very clear. I mean, it wasn't like a, but it was just the way that they had everything set was just so loud. And I've been to, Metallica and a stadium and AC/DC and all, and it's like, it was just overpowering. It was so good.
Right.
Um, and we're hoping he'll bring that fire to our gig.
For sure. So this is the second annual birthday bash. How
Mhm.
is this year going to be different than last year's?
Well, it's at a bigger venue, so we've got more tickets to sell and more people that can come. Every year we're hoping to make it, more slightly more professional, slightly more, a wider array of singers. We would love to have other folks in the area, um, that are, of note, come down and sing one. We'd love to get, you know, folks like Sebastian Bach or a Dee Snider or somebody like that, who, obviously we know are fans, but like to connect them with this is a real thing. We'd love to have you down, all of that sort of stuff. So, we're building it, and next year will be the 80th birthday. So, we're hoping to, we're already planning for that. Um, but you see lots of people doing these songs already, and I did an interview. We're doing a series of interviews with people, just telling stories about Bon and their memories and stuff like that. So one of the people we did was Sammy Hagar,
Oh,
and he
wow.
was talking about they knew each other, they were on the same bill a few times in the 70s, and he has a lot of respect for him. So he was saying, you know, um, just what a big fan he was, and he does a whole lot of Rosie in his set. So Sammy, come on down. Would love to have you. So yeah, hopefully it'll just become a bigger and bigger thing, until we stop doing
Right, right.
it.
And just to your point, everyone talking about Bond, if I read the I'm Brian book, and even Brian Johnson's like, I had nothing negative to say. He even was just like, I can't replace Bond. I can't do that. That's Bon Scott's job. And I know that you mentioned Sammy Hagar. Sometimes Sammy and David Lee Roth don't always play nice with each other, but to have Bon Scott going, or sorry, Brian Johnson going, I'm not Bon Scott. I'm going to keep his memory alive as best as I can, but I'm never going to be a Bon Scott. Just
Oh
kind of
yeah,
shows how he was as a person.
absolutely. And Brian, I think that the story is that Bon actually told Angus and Malcolm about Brian and
Oh,
just said
wow.
what a great singer he was, because they did share a bill when Brian was in Geordie and
Mhm.
Bon was in fraternity, um, in London. There's no pictures of it, although I hold out hope that we'll find one day. But yeah, so they were actually in the same room at the same time once. And and Bond was saying how amazing he thought Brian was, to Angus and Malcolm. So that's one of the reasons why they called him in the first place.
Oh, wow.
And Brian's always been super respectful and amazing. And Brian's now been in the band for 45 years. Bond was in the band for 5+ years. So it's an unfair comparison, but Brian's amazing. He hosted our we did a documentary on the ABC in Australia,
Okay.
um, 2 years ago. Called It was an episode of their series called Australian Story. You can find it on YouTube, and it's an hour special about Bond's life. And Brian actually graciously hosted it for us. So like he introduces it and says, this is who Bond was and all that stuff. So
That's awesome.
it's an amazing. It's the opposite of the Sammy and Dave
Right, right. Because I
situation.
always hear someone said something about someone or someone made a comment
Yeah,
about the other, and then you look at like AC/DC and Brian's like, he was an awesome guy. Had nothing negative to say about him. And like, it's how rock and roll should be. Going back to Kiss, who
exactly.
can't, all four of them can't, it's like mom and dad can't be in the same room anymore. So,
Exactly. Exactly.
what makes these birthday shows so special for you, and especially for the fans?
Well, it's special for me because I actually get to play Malcolm. Um, and you know, so to be able to perform with all of these great singers, these songs that, are so near and dear to me. It makes it special for me. But, it's just special to see fans have an opportunity to gather, celebrate him, listen to the music, rock out for the night, and sort of regain some of your youth, maybe. Um, especially in New York where it's tough to sell tickets to anything.
Right.
And so to have a place where AC/DC fans can gather and just listen to the music, I think that in and of itself is special.
Right, right. And especially buy a couple of records, buy some merch. I mean, I love, as you can see, wearing my Kiss t-shirt.
There you
Love a
go.
good show poster, love a good show t-shirt. So what do you hope fans take away from these birthday shows or just Bon Scott's legacy at the end of the day?
What I'm hoping is just that, you know, as we go along in time, that more people are talking about him than less, and
Mhm.
people understand who he was. And really, that's all I can hope for. Um, you know, Doing something like Bohemian Rhapsody, doing something like, you know, I don't think will be in the cards, at least for us to do,
Mhm.
just because of, Angus and the band and everything. But so for us, it's a million little things that just, it's interviews like this, articles in Ultimate Classic Rock, or, any of these sort of, and just if you have enough of them, it just makes people, um, remember who he was. And, it's not a unique situation to be in. The Ronnie James Dio family is in the
Mhm.
exact same position where he was a guy that was in several bands. He's the singer, he wrote words. Are people going to remember him, 10, 20 years from now? Um, and that's for them to do. Or really anybody, any artist, even ones that are still alive, you have to
Right.
continue to stoke that fire, or else it'll go out.
Right, right. So then can we get a little teaser? Is there ever going to be a Bon Scott biography, autobiography, his songs and words? What can fans expect from you?
Yes. Well, yes, a book. Because the family has, his sort of lyric notebook.
Right.
I'm hoping to do a book at some point, like a coffee table book of
Nice.
words, music, little reprints of trinkets, or, little sketches or drawings or stuff like that. Yeah. I think for sure, we've had conversations with some publishers, but I think maybe like his 80th birthday is going to be a big celebration next year. And we've already got some good media and stuff lined up. So hopefully, using that as a jumping off point, people will get more interested in something like that.
That's awesome. So thank you so
Yeah,
much for doing this. I really
of course.
appreciate it. Is there anything that we didn't touch on that you wanted to add before we go or anything we didn't cover?
No, I don't think so.
Okay,
And you're
awesome.
you're you're good at managing your Zoom time.
I try to keep you because I know you got a lot of other things going on today. Want to keep you for a couple of minutes here just to make sure that we touched on everything and that we're able to, discuss AC/DC and Bon Scott because we could talk about it for hours on
Yeah.
end.
Well, would love to have you as a guest,
Absolutely.
if
Thank you. I
if you can
appreciate
make
it.
it. That'd be great.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for doing this. We hope to run this very soon, hopefully in the next
Awesome.
day or two. So thank
Thanks,
you so
Michael.
much. I
Appreciate
appreciate
it.
it. Take care.
Okay, you too.